Kyle Larson says he would like to eventually run the Indianapolis 500 and compete for a win overall. Today, we're going to talk about if he should run the Indianapolis 500 or not. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, we're talking about if Kyle Larson should run the Indianapolis 500 or not. Let's go and just jump straight into it. This debate really has stemmed up from the fact of Robin Miller's article. Robin Miller basically wrote an article from Racer.com about a week ago, and he says that Kyle Larson at IndyCar needs to make the push to try to get Kyle Larson run the Indianapolis 500. Now, let's talk about Kyle Larson's season so far in 2021. Kyle Larson has been absolutely impressive to watch this year. He's won the Kings Royal. He's won the Knoxville Nationals this past weekend, as a matter of fact. 5 NASCAR Cup Series races, including a Coca-Cola 600 and the All-Star race. The Prairie Dirt Classic. On top of that, he's won the Chili Bowl multiple times, including this year, and also has a Rolex 24 victory. So he has a lot of prestige behind him. Now, Kyle Larson, like I said, I think is absolutely talented. And there's not many drivers that I think could run the Indianapolis 500, and I think could be really competitive from the get-go. Look at Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson has absolutely struggled this year, yet he's talking about me running the Indy 500. He struggled the IndyCar, but it is an oval. Now, let me say this. I absolutely 100% believe that Kyle Larson should attempt to run the Indianapolis 500. Number one, a lot of NASCAR fans who are Kyle Larson fans. Kyle Larson has become one of the most popular NASCAR drivers in NASCAR, probably up in the top 5 most popular drivers currently at the moment. Kyle Larson definitely has a lot of fan base, and a lot of those fans would trench over to watch IndyCar. And also, a lot more fans would watch the event. And also, some of the IndyCar fans will get their eyes on Kyle Larson, a guy that has done a lot of things. If you've been in the motorsports world, everybody knows who Kyle Larson is. You're going to have the cameras and eyes and ears on Kyle Larson to see if he is extremely competitive. The second thing, the prestige one. I think everybody wants to run the Indianapolis 500. The other big reason, the double. We haven't seen many drivers do a double recently. We've seen Tony Stewart do it twice back in 1999 and 2001. We've seen Robbie Gordon attempt it in 2002, and I also believe in the 1990s, and I think also in 2005 or something like that. I think he attempted the Indy 500, and in 2014, Kurt Busch attempted for Andretti Autosport. He actually ended up finishing 6th in his rookie year, almost won the race in the 26 Andretti Autosport for the Chevys. But he ended up blowing an engine in the Coke 600. It was actually running really well, I believe, in the Coke 600, running top 20 in that event before blowing an engine with about 100 laps to go to event, which was a great shame because if Kurt Busch did that, he'd be the first driver to complete the double since Tony Stewart, I think either Tony Stewart or Robbie Gordon did it back in 2002. So it definitely would be a big prestige. We haven't seen drivers at double. There's been talk maybe Cody Ware would try to run a double, complete all of the laps. There's been other drivers that have been in talks on maybe run the Coke 600. Kyle Busch is another driver we're talking about. Kyle Busch is the other driver I think that could run. But Kyle Larson has been basically winning in everything. You look what he's been able to do, and I think you have to put him in there because of his prestige. Now let's talk about the teams that Kyle Larson could go to. Now, a lot of you are mentioning Hendrick Motorsports and maybe that being an organization. Hendrick Motorsports, you never know, could attempt to run the Indianapolis 500. We've seen some NASCAR teams that have gotten involved in NASCAR recently. There's been some talks of Trackhouse Racing, which we'll get into a little bit of them maybe partnering up with a team or getting their own team and run the Indy 500 with a driver. The other team is Rick Ware Racing. Rick Ware Racing has been getting in IndyCar over the last couple of years. They made their debut in last year's Indy 500 with electrical fire when James Davison, like I said, had an electrical fire and had troubles. But they've also been running most of the year this year and actually solidly been really competitive. Of course, they've been partnered up with Dale Coyne Racing this year, but they have been extremely competitive and they've had a lot of speed as well this year, especially with Romain Grosjean, who's been there competing for a couple, especially at the Indianapolis road course when they've ran the Indy GP. So Rick Hendrick definitely could run the Indy 500. Rick Hendrick going to the Indy 500 is definitely something on the bucket list. But I'll be honest, I think it is very unlikely that Hendrick Motorsports is going to jump over to NASCAR. I think he's going to focus right there. Now we'll talk about all the other teams that could potentially be in the running. The first team I want to talk about is Andretti Autosport. Now, Andretti Autosport currently at the moment has, I think, 3 drivers locked up for this year currently at the moment. For next year, I think they have Colton Herta. I think there's a couple, I think 2 of the other drivers currently driving the team are locked up for next year, but 2 drivers are not potentially going to be there. Potentially James Hinchcliffe, Ryan Hunter-Reay may not be with the team next year. Who knows what's going to happen with Ryan Hunter-Reay? Maybe he goes to Michael Shank Racing and runs on a part-time basis. But what Andretti Autosport tends to do is they tend to bring in an extra car. Now, a lot of times, they tend to bring Stefan Wilson, but I do think next year, if he is to go to Andretti Autosport, I think that they would probably choose Kyle Larson over Stefan Wilson. And it would be an extremely competitive ride for Kyle Larson to go to. The second team I want to talk about is Michael Shank Racing. Now, Michael Shank Racing is planning to have 2 full-time cars this year. It's Julio Castroneves will be in the car full-time for the 06 car, I believe. And it is believed right now that even though it's not confirmed this time, that Simon Pageant is going to be leaving Team Penske at the end of this year, and he is going to be going over to Michael Shank Racing to drive for him full-time. Now, Michael Shank Racing has said that they are potentially going to run 3 cars in the Indianapolis 500. And with them being a former the team that won the Indy 500 this year, potentially this drivers have won 2 of the last 3 Indy 500s, you have to consider Michael Shank Racing potentially as a candidate. The one thing between both these teams and a couple teams to talk about is the Honda branding. I'm not sure if Chevy is going to want to give up on Kyle Larson, if they're going to want to put him in a Chevy team or they're going to want to put him in a Honda team. We're not exactly sure on that, but those are 2 teams that could be right. The third team we're going to talk about is Team Trackhouse. Now, Team Trackhouse has recently been in the media and talked. Justin Marks, matter of fact, has talked about what this team could eventually do, and they said they are potentially looking to run the Indy 500 next year, be the second current NASCAR team to currently race in the Indianapolis 500. They've had conversations with organizations and Justin Marks with his background as well. Not to mention he's had association with Michael Shank as well. He could go over there and have a partnership with Chip Ganassi Racing, which he used to be a driver for that team, or be a driver Trackhouse. And you never know exactly. Maybe he goes to Trackhouse if they are partnered up with Ganassi. He could go there. Or the other option for him is to go over to Chip Ganassi Racing. Now, Chip Ganassi Racing currently has 4 cars for next as of right now. They have a couple drivers that are locked up for next year. We believe Marcus Ericsson is going to be back in the 8 car next year. We know that Also is going to be driving a 10. We know Scott Dixon is going to be in the 9. Apparently, there's been some talk that Deal Coin Racing could partner up with Chip Ganassi Racing. There's also a talk like Trackhouse could get involved with Chip Ganassi Racing and partner up with them. You have to remember that Tony Kanaan is going to run the Indy 500 next year, and Jimmy Johnson is also in conversation to run right there. But like I said, this is actually the most likely Honda ride that Kyle Larson could go to. And the reason I say that this is probably the most likely Honda ride that Kyle Larson could go to is because of the fact that he used to drive for Chip Ganassi Racing in the Cup Series. As a matter of fact, Chip is the one who really got him to start his career. Kyle Larson really did not have to bring any funding to the team in 2013 when he started for Turner Scott Motorsports. And then in 2014, he jumped up to the Cup Series full-time and started racing with Chip Ganassi Racing. Got quite a few wins with teams, 6 victories, matter of fact, the most for any driver ever in the organization. Won 1 race in 2016, won 4 races in 2017, and was able to pick up his last win, Chip Ganassi, in 2019. Before he lost the ride a couple races into the 2020 season. But I would assume Chip would like to bring a winner, and he says he likes winners. And Kyle Larson is a guy that I think could have really good shot, especially how competitive the Chip Ganassi Racing cars were this past year in the Indianapolis 500. I would not be shocked to see him go to Chip Ganassi Racing if he was to attempt to run the Indianapolis 500. I think that is the most likely Honda team. But again, I think the biggest factor is the manufacturing. I think that Ganassi, there is a chance he could go there, but I don't think he's 100% likely going to end up at Chip Ganassi Racing. Now we're going to jump into the 2 Chevy teams that he could potentially go to. The first one, and this is the second most likely he could go to, is Ed Carpenter Racing. Now, it's not confirmed who will be driving for the team next year at the moment. I believe Rinus BK will be back in the number 21 car. Guy who actually won at the Indy GP earlier this year in May. He's had a pretty solid year overall this year. We know there's been some issues with him. He had an injury earlier this year. He was able to basically keep driving for the organization. The other driver, of course, is going to be Ed Carpenter. Ed Carpenter, of course, usually runs the Indianapolis 500. Of course, the owner of a team. He runs the Indy 500, tends to run all the ovals as well. I would assume Ed Carpenter is going to, at least for sure, attempt the Indy 500 and maybe some other races down the road. And maybe bring Connor Daly into the question as well, as he's been driving pretty much most of the year. I don't know if Connor Daly has been signed at this time for the 2022 season. I assume he's more likely going to end up returning to this team next year. But you never know. There is potential that they could run 4 cars next year. And Ed Carpenter Racing tends to qualify really, really well. And they tend to, at times, bring some superstars into their organization. One driver they brought into their organization, I think last a couple years, they've had different drivers in their organizations in the past and have tended to have a lot of speed. And also Danica Patrick, not to mention, has driven for the team. It'll bring a lot of star power to the team, and Ed Carpenter Racing, like I said, qualifies extremely well. They tend to qualify in the Fast 9 all the time. And I think Kyle Larson will be able to qualify in the Fast 9. The final team, and I think the most likely team that Kyle Larson would go to if he is run the Indy 500, is going to be Team Penske. First of all, the reason I think that he's would most likely go to Team Penske, number one, Chevy branding. Chevy's had a partnership with Team Penske IndyCar really since the beginning around 2013 to 2014. And I think that Jip Roger would really be non-key to try to get Kyle Larson in the organization. The second thing, there might be 4 or even 5 Team Penske cars we tend to see. Now, it's not confirmed this time if the Paretta Autosport team is going to be running next year, not the Indianapolis 500, or even running in the IndyCar Series next year, but that could be the 5th car. But if Paretta Autosport decides to break off on their own and go do their own thing, there's potential that a 5th Penske car could open up, or even a 4th Penske car could open up for next year. We have confirmation that Joseph Newgarden is going to be back with a team next year. We have confirmation that Will Power is going to be back to the team, and Scott McLaughlin is going to be driver of the team. You have 2 potential Team Penske rides that are going to be very available. And not to mention, Team Penske has won countless Indianapolis 500s, and 13 or 14 Indy 500s they've won. They've won the Indy 500 with Julio Castroneves 3 times. They won the Indy 500 with Will Power. They've won it with Rick Mears, a guy who's won 4 Indianapolis 500s. They have won, and Simon Pagenaud in 2017 as well, Juan Montoya in 2015, among other countless times that they've been able to score victories in the Indianapolis 500. If you're going to go to a team that is extremely competitive and that can win right out of the get-go, you may have trouble qualifying into the event, or starting up front, but you have a very strong opportunity and a great chance to go out there and win a lot and win these Indy 500s. Because I think that if you're going to have a shot to win, you're going to end up at Penske or another organization we'll talk about really soon. I think Team Penske, though, is the most likely where Kyle Larson could go to next year. So in conclusion, do I think Kyle Larson should run? Absolutely. He should absolutely make the consideration to run the Indianapolis 500 next year. The reasons, one, he would like to compete in the event. Number 2, he would bring a lot of eyes and ears to the sport. Now, who do I think, where do I 100% believe that Kyle Larson would go to next year if he is to run the Indianapolis 500? I think Kyle Larson is going to end up 100% next year at Team Penske. Team Penske will probably bring him in next year. I think that especially with some rides potentially opening up for next year, and with potential, like I said, Simon Pagenaud could be leaving the Team Penske Corporation at the end of this year. I think it is very likely that Kyle Larson is going to end up running the Indianapolis 500 in 2020. Or I think he's very likely. If he is running Indy 500, I think he should. And I think that if he runs it next year, I 100% believe that Kyle Larson is going to run for Team Penske. And he's said that he wants to be really competitive to win it. So I think Kyle Larson is 100% going to run the Indy 500 next year. And I think it's not 100%, but I think he should run it next year. And I think if he does, he will go over to Team Penske in 2022. So, anyway, that's for today's NASCAR and IndyCar news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to my channel to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Support page in the link description below for that. And comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think Kyle Larson should run the Indy 500 or not? And so, let me know what organization you think he should run for in 2022. I'll be returning to the normal coverage tomorrow on the channel. There will be a very long news video that you'll see, probably up to 34 minutes. I would not be surprised if it gets a lot of all the news we've had. I'll do a major catch-up and recording session for that, and we'll have that video out really soon. But anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and IndyCar content on this channel like this. Take care, everybody.